On this Saturday night, Canadian emergency wards on life support. Staff shortages caused some Ontario hospitals to close their doors.
To be brutally honest, what can you do?
A system in need of urgent care with no help on the way. Conditions conspire for wildfires.
Currently, the fire danger in the province is very high.
Evacuations in BC, Alberta on edge. But weather is just part of the problem. In Kentucky, dozens killed by flooding.
I thought, I'm going to have to swim.
And the toll is rising with the water. And
almost to a stop over here.
Just another day at the office.
The danger level is real.
For a Canadian born to do the unimaginable in the air.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Getting critically ill or injured could be a very scary prospect in many parts of Canada right now. Emergency rooms are in crisis right across the country. In Ontario, staffing shortages mean some hospital departments have been forced to close, and patients are waiting more than 20 hours to be treated. Frontline staff, namely nurses, are overwhelmed and are now begging the government for help. But as Mike Drolet reports, the problem has no short-term solutions.
Mere days into a province-wide assessment of the healthcare system, the Ontario Nurses Association visited a neonatal unit.
They have 51 babies and 18 nurses on a shift.
And then a children's ER.
They're set up for about 60 visits a day. They're having 120 plus visits a day. How does that work?
The system, as Catherine Hoy sees it, needs urgent care. The Ontario Hospital Association pegs the job vacancy rate for registered nurses at 13%. Hoy's early assessment suggests it's far worse.
We will be well over 20. I hope we're not at 30%.
The shortage predates the pandemic, but it's become more acute as nurses have either quit or retired.
I personally don't know what we could do tomorrow that would make a difference. And that's the frustrating part of all of this, is we all know that the problem is there, but how do you fix it?
Ontario's Ministry of Health would not speak on camera, sending a statement that reads, "We have an ambitious plan for the largest healthcare recruitment and training initiative in the province's history, with a plan to add over 5,000 new and upskilled registered nurses." What they don't say is where they'll find them.
To be brutally honest, what can you do? I mean, we can't clone nurses. I wish we could.
One option is to fast-track the hiring of more IENs, or internationally educated nurses, who have to meet standards set by the College of Nurses before joining the workforce. Even for nurses like Rola El Mubader, who arrived in Canada with years of experience and a master's degree.
It took me 2 years to become registered in Ontario.
In addition to nursing, she now helps other IENs through a group called CARE, which currently has 900 nurses in the pipeline. However, they believe far more have chosen to walk away from the profession rather than go through years of certification.
There might be other nurses out there, IENs, that working as florists, at Tim Horton, that we don't know about them. They dropped even the idea of starting the process to become registered.
Hiring more nurses is not the solution to the healthcare crisis, but it's a good start. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
With Vancouver Pride underway, health officials have set up monkeypox vaccination clinics. And now officials in Montreal are worried some big tourist events may soon cause a spike in cases. It comes 1 week after the disease was officially declared a public health emergency by the World Health Organization. As Dan Spector reports, the concerns come as both the distribution and efficacy of the vaccine faces questions.
Next week, Montreal's Pride Festival will be back in full swing for the first time since 2019, bringing joy and celebration to the city. But with monkeypox still circulating, a doctor on the front line of the outbreak is concerned.
We're worried. We're worried.
Dr. Régent Thomas says his clinic just saw its 100th monkeypox patient. He wants to put out the message that though the disease is not fatal, that doesn't mean it's benign. He's seeing people with severe pain.
It's painful. It's ulcer big like that on the genitals. It ulcer on one of my patients, all in the face.
359 of Canada's 803 confirmed cases are in Quebec. Infections are also rising in the United States, now with more than 4,900 cases. The bulk of them are in New York State, which has more than 1,200 probable or confirmed cases.
We think that there might be cases related to travel over the coming weeks.
Monkeypox is still mostly affecting men who have sex with other men and is transmitted by prolonged skin-to-skin contact. There is a vaccine, and about 27,000 doses have been administered across the country, including more than 1,000 in Montreal. But Thomas says it's not enough.
I'm surprised how many of my patients have not been vaccinated, who are high-risk patients.
Any man who has sex with other male partners outside of a stable, unique partner are eligible in Montreal.
For those who are getting the shot, Thomas wonders how well it's working.
There are very few data of the efficacy of this vaccine, and it's only one dose.
It's supposed to be a 2-dose vaccine, but so far only single doses have been offered.
We have a large population that would benefit from the vaccine and limited supplies.
Officials want to encourage every eligible person to go get the shot. Montreal Pride has been working to promote it too. Dan Spector, Global News, Montreal.
Soaring temperatures in Western Canada have sparked dozens of new wildfires in BC and put Albertans on edge. One of the largest wildfires is in BC's Okanagan region, where nearly 24 properties are under an evacuation order and 24 more are on standby. The fire broke out early Friday and quickly grew to 100 hectares. Alberta hasn't seen any major wildfires yet, but firefighters there are prepared to deploy at a moment's notice. Experts say while a wet spring has helped, there's still a serious risk. Tracy Nagai has more.
This pounding rain seen in and around Calgary earlier this year and the humidity levels are now being credited for keeping wildfires in the area at a minimum so far this summer.
We're not seeing the critically low humidities yet, which we can see at this time of year, which will really impact our wildfire operations.
However, experts say the moisture from days past can only compete with these extreme temperatures for so long.
We are under a fire advisory that was enacted this week. The implications of that are we're no longer issuing any types of fire permits, and it also serves as a warning to our recreational users to be extra diligent this long weekend.
And parts of the province continue to be listed as high or very high for wildfire danger.
Currently, the fire danger in the province is very high in the southern areas, low to moderate in the northern areas of the province.
In BC, record temperatures and an extended dry spell have fire crews on high alert.
It's really accelerated the drying of our forest fuels and conditions. We've also seen the snow at upper elevations finally leave, so the forests are now more receptive to ignitions and more available to burn.
The big concerns remain around thunderstorms and human activity.
We don't want people burning outside of approved fire pits. We don't want people using fireworks, as much fun as they are. Fireworks can set off, multiple fires, and before you even call 911, it's a raging inferno.
Last year, 67% of our wildfires were human caused, so we encourage anyone who's out in the forested area to use caution.
Wildfire officials say during the long weekend, they'll often find dozens of campfires still smoldering. And with several weeks of summer still left, they're not letting their guard down anytime soon. Tracy Nagai, Global News.
The death toll in Kentucky is rising, with flash floods killing more than 24 people so far. The governor expects the number to rise significantly, but says it could take weeks to find all of the victims. Rescue crews are struggling to get into the hardest hit areas, and as Jennifer Johnson reports, more rain is on the way.
The devastation in eastern Kentucky is massive, with some waterways still cresting, and more rain in the forecast for Sunday and Monday. Search crews continue to rescue people trapped in their homes, but other places are still too difficult to reach, either by air or on the ground. At least 28 state roads remain blocked by water or mudslides. First responders have already saved hundreds of lives, including Patricia Colombo, trapped in her car by raging floodwaters.
I thought, I'm going to have to swim, and I didn't know what to do. Honestly, I didn't.
In an area used to flooding, this was something never seen before. Now the focus is on finding the missing. Mountains of debris have been swept downstream, where officials hope some survivors may be found.
Our goal today is to get as many people to safety as possible and make a plan for Sunday afternoon through Monday when the storms leave.
Children are among the dead, including 4 siblings. One local sheriff recorded his first fatality, his great aunt.
I sat down in my hallway last night about 12:30 and I cried for an hour.
With so many unaccounted for, the death toll is expected to rise. 72-year-old Dennis Stacy is among the missing. His home was completely flooded. There is no cell service in most of the region. Stacy's daughter is waiting in agony.
It's just the not knowing and the fact that he's missing. It's just excruciating.
President Joe Biden has declared the region a disaster area, pledging billions to rebuild.
Never in my life we've seen it come up that fast.
Those who were lucky to survive the fast rising waters now find themselves with either no home, many just floated away, or very little left.
The mud's got to be squeegeed out, get it all cleaned up. You got to Clorox, disinfect everything.
Officials say it will take years to rebuild the area, among the poorest regions in America, and it will likely take weeks before all of the missing are accounted for. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Following the conclusion of what he called a week-long penitential pilgrimage in Canada, Pope Francis agreed the abuses Indigenous people faced while attending residential schools amounted to a cultural genocide.
Ma ho descritto che è vero, sì, è un genocidio, sì, sì.
The pontiff made the comments to reporters on his flight back to Rome from Iqaluit. He says he didn't use the term during his Canadian trip because it never came to mind. But when asked about it, he stressed that what he described in a number of the apologies he delivered during the trip was clearly a genocide. Residential school survivors and their families looking for help can call the Residential School Survivors and Families Crisis Line. The number is 1-800-721-0066. More than 120 people were injured in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad today after thousands of protesters breached the country's parliament. The supporters of an influential Shia cleric stormed the high-security building for the second time in a week as they opposed the nomination of a pro-Iran rival candidate for prime minister. The large crowds pushed past security forces in Baghdad's heavily fortified green zone in order to get in. Coming up, Donald Trump, why he may be ramping up to another run. U.S. President Joe Biden is heading back into quarantine after testing positive for COVID-19 again. Biden tested positive for the first time 9 days ago and tested negative 4 days ago. Officials say the 79-year-old has a rare case of COVID rebound following treatment with an antiviral drug, Paxlovid. The White House says Biden is asymptomatic but will isolate for at least another 5 days. Still hurting from his 2020 election loss and facing potential prosecution for his role in the January 6th insurrection, there are signs former U.S. President Donald Trump is preparing to make another run at the White House. The former president may even launch his campaign before this November's critical midterm elections. Jackson Prosco reports.
For the first time since leaving the White House, Donald Trump returned to Washington this week, teasing his future plans.
But they really want to damage me so I can no longer go back to work for you. And I don't think that's going to happen.
The former president remains obsessed with his election loss, still pushing his big election lie.
It was a catastrophe, that election, a disgrace to our country.
Yet all signs point to Trump running again in 2024, a campaign in which he is likely to play the victim.
And in 2024, most importantly, we are going to take back our beautiful, magnificent White House.
Avoiding prosecution may be Trump's biggest motivation. The Department of Justice is still probing his role in the attempt to overthrow the 2020 election. State officials in Georgia are deepening their investigation too.
And he certainly will portray any indictment as political, extremely political, if it happens while he is a presidential candidate.
He likely won't go unchallenged. Former Vice President Mike Pence, who barely escaped the mob on January 6th, is now testing the waters with a message about moving beyond the election lie.
Now, some people may choose to focus on the past, but elections are about the future. And I believe conservatives must focus on the future to win back America.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is quickly trying to make a name for himself as Trump without the baggage.
I am not backing down 1 inch
and we are going to make sure we stand up to the left.
When might Trump make his return official? Only he knows that. But if it's before November 8th, the former president could become the key issue in high-stakes midterm elections.
Because he's simply going to interfere with the process and become an issue potentially even bigger than Biden and inflation.
As political comebacks go, this is no sure bet. But Trump has made it clear he's not ready to fade away from public life. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Ahead, the impact of rapid glacier melt on water supplies and sea levels.
You're watching Global National.
Just like last summer in Western Canada, this year has seen extreme temperatures in Europe and elsewhere in the Northern Hemisphere. The effects are perhaps most notable at high altitude and latitude on glaciers and ice sheets. As Redmond Shannon reports, the acceleration of their retreat is having an immediate and long-term impact.
It's high summer on top of the Arctic's largest block of ice, the enormous 2-kilometer deep Greenland ice sheet. Scientists are literally trying to get to the bottom of it, drilling down to better understand the sheet's past and its future as it continues to shrink in a warming planet.
We suspect that there is meltwater at the bedrock, and that's why the ice can move that fast in an ice stream, but that is something we will only know when we get to the bedrock.
This summer has seen the temperature spike to almost zero high up on the sheet. Researchers say a widespread melting event across the sheet happened just once in the last millennium, but 4 times since the year 2000.
If you're close to melting, the ice gets really sticky and the skis, they stick. And also the airplanes, they actually break up the skiway. So it's really hard to do landing and takeoff.
But more importantly, a melting ice sheet in Greenland means rising sea levels worldwide. Thousands of kilometers away in the Alps, Swiss glaciologist Andreas Linsbauer has never seen anything like this year. Before 2022, the deepest drop in ice level he'd seen was 1 meter.
So we have already melt of 2 meters, and it's midway of summer.
Tourists don't even need to measure the difference.
You don't see it always in nature, the consequences, and now you really see it like, oh my God, I was here like 15 years ago and now the snow is gone and the rivers and the mountains are not there anymore.
It's a similar story in Western Canada, where scientists say 70% of glaciers will be gone by the end of the century, with huge potential consequences for freshwater supplies. The record summer of 2021 only accelerated their retreat.
I can't move it.
In Switzerland, this hiker says he won't be around to see the long-term effects, but says he's worried for what these melts will mean for his grandchildren. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
A thrill-a-second job for a Canadian air race pilot. Next.
We put on our costume and we go down the road and we celebrate life.
Life once again being celebrated on the streets of Toronto today as the Caribbean Carnival parade made its grand return after 2 years of pandemic cancellations. The 55th anniversary of the parade was one of the biggest to date, with an estimated 10,000 people participating and even more taking part in the festivities. In British Columbia, thousands are expected to flood Vancouver's iconic English Bay for the final night of the Celebration of Light. The annual fireworks spectacle also took a pandemic hiatus, but it's back, and with an aerobatic show. As Jay Janauer found out, the pilot was born for the job.
Hanging straight up, kick her in the back, almost to a stop over here.
My office, it's a fast one, faster than most. Very exciting, and it is, I think, truly, it's that three-dimensional freedom where you're just not constrained really in any way, shape, or form of what you can do with the airplane.
Being in the cockpit with Red Bull Aerobatic pilot Pete McLeod is more thrilling than any thrill ride you can think of, and not thrill-a-minute kind of stuff, more like thrill-a-second.
Going straight up, put a roll in it. Whoa! Still hanging straight up, kick her in the back.
these maneuvers. I've done thousands of times at a higher altitude, and you bring that precision in to be able to do it low level, because when you are doing it close to the ground, there's zero margin for error. There's no lying about that. The danger level is real. It's very pass-fail.
Number 84 McLeod, you're cleared into the track. Smoke on.
Pete's one of Red Bull's top air race pilots. His first seat time in a plane coming at the age of 6 weeks old, when his father, who was a pilot, took Pete for his first ride. He's been flying ever since, but not for the reason you're probably thinking of.
It's interesting, you know, I never label myself as like a stunt man or an adrenaline junkie. Actually, I'm not, you won't catch me like hopping on a skateboard.
McLeod's flown his Red Bull stunt plane all over the world, but performing here above English Bay in front of hundreds of thousands of fellow Canadians is Pete's definition of a perfect work day. And what a day at the office it is.
The event here in Vancouver is something we look forward to. The desk is the same, the layout of the desk in the plane, but the view out the office window changes. So I've been very fortunate to fly and compete largely all over the world, and which is pretty cool from you know, a kid from Northern Ontario.
There we go.
My job's not a job. I go out and do what I love and have fun every day, and I'm just ultra fortunate that it works and people enjoy it. So I think that's the main thing for me.
Jay Janor, Global Sports.
Amazing and just a little scary. That's Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Colleen Christie. Tonight's Your Canada is the Vernon Yacht Club in Vernon, British Columbia. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Good night.